Hello, Kai.
Hello, Ashley.
All right, we have a few people joining, so we're going to give it one more minute.
Sure.
Okay. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Talking Payments. I'm Ashley Paulus, VP of Customer Success here at GetGo.com, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Jun Kai Chan, or Kai, excuse me, COO at GetGo. The session is going to be around 30 minutes, and we'd love to hear from you throughout the session, so please leave any questions you have for Kai in the comment section below. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Kai, please give us a quick intro to yourself and tell us a bit more about GetGo.
Sure. Thank you, Ashley, and hi, everybody. Yeah, so just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Kai. I'm based in Singapore, and I've been in the workforce for about 10 years now. I started off actually in the research consultancy space, so I specialized in the mobility sector, handling air, land, and sea. So it's pretty cool looking at people moving around and all that. And eventually, I decided that hey, the automotive industry looks pretty cool. So I took a leap of faith and jumped over to the automotive sector. Started off with an OEM before I went to a large distributor. Yeah, so I spent a few years of my career there before I did a short stint at a robotics startup in Singapore. And that was, after a year, I decided that let's do something. And and after that, GetGo came up, and I was one of the founding members of the team.
Yeah. Awesome. How many founders do you guys have?
It's myself and another 3.
Oh wow, yeah, that's fantastic. So GetGo is a fairly new player in the Singapore mobility sector, but you guys have already made a huge impression. Your social media presence is incredible, and the Singapore community's love for your brand is super evident. So what was the genesis for the idea of GetGo, and why did you think it would be a success?
Yeah, I think for the Singapore market, one very interesting thing that we see is that assets in Singapore are tremendously expensive. So if you look at cars, for example, Toyota Vios will cost you easily 70,000 USD. So it's extremely difficult to acquire an asset. But that being said, if you look at the car parks in Singapore, the vehicles are sitting in the car parks idle for about 80-90% of the day. So in terms of asset utilization, it's pretty low. And if you think about it, right, you're spending that much money, but you're not optimizing your asset. And Singapore is an extremely small country, so we are land scarce, and with assets idling around, it's really not efficient in terms of the use of resources. So when we looked at it, we thought like there must be a way to better utilize the assets to balance demand together with the supply that is available in the market. And if we take another step back, we also can see that in terms of parking spaces, they are not all the time utilized to its maximum. So there's still that gap in terms of demand and supply that we felt that we could really come into plug. And if we looked at the entire industry and we asked ourselves, what is really stopping people from sharing resources and all that, there's a very traditional thought behind it that if you look at 20 years ago, for example, people go, cars are so expensive, it's an individual asset, I don't want to share it with anybody. However, as time goes by, we see that the landscape has changed quite a bit. So it's with the new generation, the youths coming in, it's more of a mobility option than social status. So we can see that there's that opportunity that we can really come in to be able to match asset together with customers, with users. And how we do that is by creating a very unique and beautiful experience for them. And one thing that we were very clear on when we started GetGo is users, the customers are at the heart of what we do, and it's extremely important that we look after and we curate that experience that our users go through when they interact with the assets. Another fun fact in Singapore, and I think it's quite applicable in most markets, if we look at it, the number of people who hold a license, a class 3, that's what we call it in Singapore, class 3 license to enable you to drive a car, a Toyota Vios, a Toyota Sienna, for example. There are 2 million people in Singapore who have that license. However, there are only 600,000 vehicles on the roads. And of this 600,000, some people have 2 or maybe even 3 vehicles. Yeah, so that demand to drive exists in Singapore. But yet the supply and the demand doesn't match. So there's the
Mm.
inherent, want to get behind a wheel, to put your hands on that wheel, to experience the freedom of driving, and that's something that we really wanted to, go into the market, enhance that experience that people have when they interact with driving, interact with mobility. Yeah, and so that's why when we looked at it, we felt that there is really an opportunity for us to come in, create a beautiful experience, and give people ultimately that freedom to drive.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest difference between like GetGo and some of the other players in the mobility sector? How do you guys really set yourselves apart?
Right, great question. Again, we go back to that whole user experience. Yeah.
Mm.
So if you're looking at vehicles, for example, like what I shared, they're extremely expensive. Yeah. So like to be able to drive, you the moment you get behind the wheel, your mindset changes. You are in a different experience space. You're in different service scape. There are different expectations. Yeah. So one thing we're very clear of is that, again, that user experience. When we looked at the market, there were many gaps in terms of what the competitors were doing. So we felt that by coming in, by understanding, by putting our customers first, we'll be able to create that very seamless user experience, both from a technology standpoint. So we built a mobile app to enable people to lock and unlock vehicles anywhere. So we
Yeah.
have vehicles stationed over 600 locations around Singapore. We have 700 vehicles. Yeah,
Mm.
so in different, we call them HDB, Housing Development Board. So these are very clustered housing estates. They live in, most Singaporeans, 80% of Singaporeans stay in flats. Yeah, so this in a single unit, you can have about 2,000 residents there. So by placing cars there, any one of the residents, once they download our mobile application, they are able to lock and unlock the vehicles. They pay by the hour, they pay for mileage, and they can experience that freedom to drive. Yeah, so one thing that we made sure that we are very different from the other players in the market is that we made sure that it's a very seamless experience throughout the sign up process. So we integrated ourselves with government services. We can
Yeah.
pull from government databases for your driving license to check whether you are eligible to drive.
Yes.
Yeah. At the same time, we made sure that you can access the vehicles anytime. We don't have to have anybody at the back end unlocking the vehicle for you. You can use your mobile phone to access the vehicle, and when you're done, once you click that end trip button, automatically you're charged for it. Yeah, it's not like something that we have to send you an invoice. We have to wait for you to pay. So it's really, really very seamless, very very geared towards the customer. And this is something that we invested quite a bit of time and resources to make sure that we are different from the other players in the industry.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So that sounds like a lot of work, obviously. Tell us about some of the challenges that you've encountered as you've scaled this big idea.
GetGo is actually only 7 months old. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Wow.
we've actually grown from a very small company into the largest car sharing operator in Singapore in a
Wow.
short span of 7 months. And the amount of challenges that we faced, they're quite a bit. Yeah, I think when we started off, as a small company, as a startup, there's always that competition in terms of securing resources and talents. Yeah,
Mhm.
so we when we spoke to people, they were going, "Who are you? Why
Yeah.
should we join you?" And in Singapore, as a regional hub, we are fighting against like big companies like Google, Facebook, Shopee, Lazada. Yeah, so when,
Mhm.
when people look at you, it's like, "Hey, who are you?" Yeah, so I think one of the key things we really had to do, and even when talking with partners also, for people who we want to deal with, Checkout was one of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was a challenge of securing this talents, these partners to convincing them that GetGo is something that's going to be we are going to be a very successful company. Please work with us. And it was really about sharing the story, about getting people excited about this new form of mobility, sharing with our prospective employees that the company is geared for success. This is the time to strike in the market because the way people view mobility is evolving, and this is the time that we can really come in to play a bigger part in how the future of mobility will evolve.
Yeah.
So this securing of resources was one of the very big challenges that we faced at an early day. So this was like really talking to many different partners, potential partners, trying to find the right talents, and even engaging with the various government stakeholders. So thankfully in Singapore, the government is pretty open about such things. So
Yes.
that really helped us in the early days. Yeah, and then you add in the customer bit, and it gets a lot more complicated. Yeah, so like what I shared, right? You have 2 million drivers, you have 2 million different like voices that we have to deal with, and it's
Yeah.
really about balancing the commercial and the experience that we want to really create for the customers. So it was really about setting the necessary north stars for the business. Yeah, to really go about co-creating this experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Now, to kind of switch gears a little bit, so sorry, we had a little bit of latency there, but so kind of to switch gears a little bit and talk about more on that customer experience. I think that payments are a super crucial but often overlooked part of that full customer journey. And the checkout experience needs to be just as seamless for your customers as their driving experience and their being ability to unlock and utilize a car quickly and have a really pleasant experience there. So what is GetGo's kind of perspective on this?
um when we started off, right, payments was one of the things that we really thought about quite a bit. But we it's like that iceberg theory that everybody talks about, right? You see the tip but you don't understand what's at the bottom. So we were actually extremely lucky to have bumped into checkout and worked out something with them. We view them as partners. So in the early days, you know payment was a part that the way we viewed payments was it's a way to facilitate that collection of funds from our customers. But at the same time, we didn't really understand how payments could be stumbling blocks if not properly managed. So one of the examples that I can
Mhm.
share is in the early days we collected a $200 pre-auth amount from our customers. So
Yes.
this is through the checkout platform. How it worked is when you made a booking, we through the checkout platform we would hold an amount of 200 Singapore dollars on your credit or debit card. Yeah, and after you completed the trip, we will instruct checkout to release that amount.
Yep.
Yeah, so we thought in theory that, hey, how hard can this be? Let's just do it this way. And when we did it, there was so much backlash. So we are really very thankful for checkout because they came in and they explained to us how the whole payment process works. So I think for everybody on this call, just to share the thing, it's so checkout can release funds immediately, but the
Mhm.
banks may not release it
Exactly.
immediately.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, so we were very thankful that checkout was able to share their past experiences with us, shared with us how we can engage with the banks. There's this thing called the ARN, the acquirer reference number, that
Hmm.
we had to send to the banks to tell the banks, hey, we have already completed the transaction, can you please release the funds? It works if you are doing like 10 transactions a day, but when you're doing thousands of transactions a day, it goes crazy. Yeah, so we worked very closely with checkout, and it was so important because a process like that really hurts the customer experience. So we had customers who were coming to us telling us that, I'm making 10 bookings a week because I like your service so much, but
Hmm.
the bank is holding 2,000 Singapore dollars on my card. How do you expect me to go about my daily life with that? Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a wake up call for us. Um, I think checkout was very nice. They saw the potential that GetGo had, and they assigned us their best engineers, their best salespersons, and all that. So they really helped us along the way. They shared with us best practices. They
Yeah.
also linked us up with different different banks also to basically guide us along how to engage them, what kind of emails to write. And all that. And eventually, we had a bigger conversation along the lines of, is this necessarily the right way if we want to, curate that experience for customers? And I think together with checkout, we came to the conclusion of, if we really want that experience for customers to be magical, to be beautiful, to be different, from what else you have in the market, it's extremely crucial to take the banks out of the picture.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what GetGo decided on is we remove that $200 pre-authentication amount. So today, what you have is a very, very smooth and direct business model. Upon confirmation of your booking, we charge you the time charge. So that means the number of hours that you have booked, we charge you the amount for that. And at the end of your booking, we charge you for the mileage of how much you have driven. So it's just two transactions rather than one upfront, and then you collect the money from it. But this way, it really enabled us to create a much better payment experience for the customer. We no longer have people coming to us saying that, there's like thousands of dollars being held up by the bank, and it's on no fault of GetGo's or Checkout's part. We have done what we can, but the banks just didn't recognize that the transaction is completed and you can release that amount.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you guys notice a big difference in feedback directly from your customers or your power users that were using your system all the time?
Yep.
Was there a big difference in feedback from them?
Yep. I think the best way our customers feedback is by using the service more.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
So, the moment we removed that, there was a big announcement that we did, and we saw usage rates surge. So within the first hour, our system was already overwhelmed by the number of bookings that were coming in. We had to upgrade, what we have back then few
it's a good
times
problem.
after that happened. Really good problem. And I think for checkout
Well,
also,
that's
because
fantastic.
because of like the increased volume, also it's a win-win, right, for both parties.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We love when our merchants are successful.
Yep.
So let's talk about the payments ecosystem. Super fast evolving, really different in Singapore than in a lot of different parts of the world. What would GetGo like to see that would benefit your business from a payments perspective?
I think if we look at the global landscape of how transactions are happening, we are going more and more cashless. We are going more and more. We are growing more and more impatient when it comes to the speed in which we transact. And transact doesn't mean we pay. It also means that at times when we request for refunds and all that, we are seeing customers becoming more impatient. From a business perspective, it affects our cash flow also. So there's going to be a bit more impatience from every
Yeah.
party inside. And I think it's about all players within the industry keeping up with the customer requirements, to make sure that we can create that customer first, very cashless and seamless experience. So it won't happen, I believe, from checkout alone also. I mean, there are different banks, there are different there's GrabPay in Singapore. So there are many different merchants also that we have to deal with. And until everybody can be truly integrated, there are always going to be that hurdles. But I think with partners, we can work together. As partners, we can work together to see how we can overcome these challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys have expansion plans outside of the region, or even outside of Singapore? I'll be less ambitious.
So I think taking a step back again, the first thing we really want to do is we want to be strong in Singapore. We want to make sure that we can serve, all the Singapore residents. And to do so, our primary focus for the time being would be to really increase the amount of vehicles and locations that we have in Singapore. So we are at about 600 locations. We plan to go up to about 900 locations by the end of the year, and we should see about 1,000 cars flying, 1,000 GetGo cars plying the Singapore roads. The to do this, it's not just about adding vehicles. It's also about having deeper tech integrations. So I think with checkout, there are things called webhooks that enable us to pull information into our back end system, so that as we grow, we don't have more work to do. Things are more integrated back end. Accounting wise, it's not that much of a headache. So there's still a lot to be done in the Singapore market. But that being said, circling back to your question, whether we are looking, within the region, the short answer is yes, we are. I think stay tuned. There's going to be interesting things that you will see from GetGo beyond Singapore. Yeah, so this is something that we can really look forward to. But I think, again, coming back, the Singapore market is kind of our base to make sure that things are in place, are ready to be applied in other markets. Yeah, so nothing is stopping us from going overseas as long as we are really sure that the integration, we have found the right partners, and our tech integration capabilities are at a certain level. Yeah, and I think at this current point, it's been pretty good. It's been an amazing experience with all the partners that we have been working with, and of course, big shout out to Checkout, because without a proper payment platform, it will be really challenging to be able to scale to this level that quickly. 7 months.
Right. No, you guys have had just absolutely explosive growth, and it's been really exciting to kind of cheer you on as your payments partner. So keep it up. We're very excited to see what happens next. I actually have a question that's COVID related, which I know everyone is so COVID fatigued, but I know that especially in Singapore with the lockdown dynamics, people were very keen to start using like personal mobility as opposed to public transport, which is the most common way to get around in Singapore. Do you think that these habits have become more sticky, and we're going to see this as like a long term behavior for people as opposed to something that's kind of on trend just because of this big macro factor of COVID happening now?
Great question. I think when we look at the car sharing landscape, it is right to say that COVID has provided a platform for people to explore this new form of mobility. Now,
Mhm.
the second question is, will it stay? The short answer is yes. And why do I say this? Is because if we look at why people are using car sharing services, it's not 100% of the time in place of public transport. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what we do see is people use car sharing for very occasion-based services reasons. Yeah. So one of the classic examples that I like to share, we spoke to one of our customers, and he was sharing that when he discovered GetGo, what he did is he realized that he had multiple errands to run in the morning. First
Yeah.
thing he had to do was to send his wife to work. Then he had to drop his kids off. Then after that, his wife would nag at him to go and get groceries. Yeah, yeah. So rather than taking public transport and spending an extra 1 or 2 hours, getting from point A to point B before he can reach home and start working for himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
These were things that with a vehicle, it will enable him to do this in a more efficient and cost-effective manner. Notice that these occasions are multi-stop trips. It's not something that you can do easily with a taxi, for example. Yeah, so there are these occasions that car sharing is here to serve a specific purpose. For example, sending an elderly parent to the hospital. Yeah, this
Mhm.
is something that you may want a vehicle to do so rather than a taxi, or rather than public transport. So really occasion based. Weekends, if you want to take your kids out to the beach or to the zoo, yeah, it's definitely more convenient to lug them all into a vehicle and say let's go. Yeah, and ultimately it's going back to the same point of when we look at vehicles, how often or how much are they utilized? 90% of the time they're sitting in the car park lot gathering dust, snow, and whatnot. So if we are able to create this service that we can share these resources for the occasions as and when you need them, it's going to help to balance the number of vehicles on the roads. It's going to help with cost also, especially in Singapore. You don't have to sink down 70,000 80,000 USD to get a vehicle, and you can use that money to um, start a family, invest, start a business, look after your elderly parents. There's so many possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kai, thank you so much for your time today. Our time is just about up. Again, we are super proud to be working with GetGo. I'm really excited to see you guys continue to grow and scale in Singapore and hopefully across the region and across the world. For those of you guys listening, if you have more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll answer them throughout the rest of the day. Please do follow GetGo on social media and here on LinkedIn. And everybody have a great rest of your day.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ashley, and thank you
Bye.
everybody.
Yeah. See you later. Have a good one, Kai.
Yep. Cheers. See you.
Cheers.